Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us. Welcome to the SailPoint Rethink Identity webinar series. This is the first of several webinars over the next couple of months that SailPoint will be hosting. Today's topic is Stop the #1 Cloud Threat, Unauthorized Access. Now, this session is being recorded, so we will send out the recording to everyone within 24 hours after the webinar. Now today we have myself, Michelle France. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for SailPoint SaaS Services, and Manish Kalia, a Director of our Product Management team. We're going to walk through how SailPoint is adopting new rethink identity approaches to embrace the abruptly changing landscape of identity governance. Then we'll cover specifically how the explosion of cloud infrastructure, such as AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, or GCP, is one of the primary variables behind our rethink identity approach, and then how you can take advantage of cloud governance to get control of the cloud. We'll also demo our cloud governance solution so you can see it in action and have time at the end for some questions. Now, identity has been around for a while. Initially, IT used it as a tool to help with basic provisioning, so ensuring people got access to apps that they needed, especially when they were onboarded. Now, over the years, identity has really evolved into a very strategic security and compliance solution to help organizations basically answer the three key questions of who has access to what, who should have access, and how are they using that access. Now, digital transformation has introduced so many new variables that it has become almost overwhelming to IT departments to keep up. Now, these new variables include, more user types, such as employees, contractors, vendors, partners, more apps, and more apps. More sensitive data is being stored across on-prem and cloud storage repositories, and now the explosion of cloud infrastructure, such as AWS, Azure, and GCP. Now, there's never been a more critical time for organizations to rethink what identity can do for them. Now, the good news is that SailPoint has anticipated these changes coming, and we did something about it. Now, using AI and machine learning, we've been able to take the complexity out of identity, so making it much easier to administer and use, so that you can focus on what matters the most, your business. Now, for those who may not be experienced with identity, you might be thinking it's simply about access management, but it's really so much more than that. Identity helps you control access once your users gain entry into your network so that each user can only see and use what is relevant to them to do their job. It enables your workforce with 24/7 self-service, which offloads a lot of IT help desk calls, saving you tons on cost and really helps drive productivity and user satisfaction. AI and machine learning also makes it easy to know if it's safe to grant someone access or not, and helps you quickly find risky user access. And because it's delivered from the cloud and uses industry best practices, it's really quick to deploy and configure. Now, if you've already been engaged with identity, you've seen this evolution take place. The good news for you is that AI and machine learning are big game changers for your identity and IT teams, especially if you have a large amount of identities that you're managing. It's now so much easier to create access models and roles, safely automate IT tasks, and keep policies up to date as your organization changes. And with AI recommendations, your line of business managers won't have to guess or rubber stamp their way through access certifications. Now, in fact, your compliance audits will be much easier to prepare for and demonstrate when auditors ask for documentation. The bottom line is people are the new security parameter, and now you can consider identity to be the new firewall. Now, whether you are new to identity or an expert, you will find that AI-driven identity will help you accelerate your business, enable your workforce, and help you achieve continuous compliance. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll dive into rethinking how identity can address both your cloud infrastructure and privileged access to your application and workloads running on that infrastructure. Now, a lot of organizations are adopting cloud infrastructure as a service platforms, such as AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, or GCP, to build and host their internal and external facing applications and workloads. These cloud applications and platforms are really helping organizations cut costs, work more innovatively and flexibly. You can spin up new IT resources in just a click. You can scale to your exact business needs in minutes without having to guess on capacity, and you only pay for what you consume. You no longer have to maintain data centers, and you can actually focus on your business. You can go global in minutes and deploy your applications anywhere around the world in just a few clicks. Cloud IaaS platforms provide a simple way to access applications and workloads such as servers, storage, and databases, among other things. It's become so pervasive that 84% of organizations are leveraging the cloud, and almost 80% are using at least 2 different cloud IaaS platforms. Now, beyond the ease of using these platforms, there are also many reasons why businesses are using multiple platforms. So why would organizations use multiple clouds? Now, it's important to maintain business flexibility and continuity by avoiding a single vendor approach. If there is an SLA or a pricing issue with a particular vendor, your organization is at risk. But by avoiding dependency on a single vendor, you can quickly pivot your business when and if needed. Now, each cloud platform provides a specific mix of features and functions that may be optimized for a specific application or workload. But with a multi-cloud strategy, you can choose the vendor that is better specialized for a particular use case. As with the data center environment, it's important to maintain high availability and support disaster recovery. If a single cloud vendor goes down or impacts performance, it's critical to be able to route workloads to another cloud provider if needed. With the rise of data privacy, it's imperative that you are addressing global and regional compliance requirements. So one cloud provider may be able to address these requirements in certain regions or versus others, and may not, globally. But with a multi-cloud approach, this can be done much easier and with lower risk. Now, there's no disputing the benefits and ease of a multi-cloud strategy, but as organizations rush towards IaaS adoption, security has been left in the dust as cloud environments start to resemble the wild, wild west. Now, the ease and efficiencies afforded by cloud IaaS, as I mentioned earlier, have been a huge enabler to system architects and DevOps teams. But the security and governance needs are just as important as all those benefits. Much like when social media was new and transcendent communication platform that easily joined together family and friends, the potential negative impact of data privacy was rarely, if ever, mentioned early on as adoption took off. It was only after many high-profile incidences involving social media that data privacy even began to be addressed. Now, the accelerated adoption of cloud IaaS is following that similar pattern. It's become so easy to spin up an AWS instance that this ease has contributed an unprecedented scale and complexity of cloud workloads, which can be in the thousands, if even millions. So on top of that, you can have hundreds of changes every day involving, the creation and deletion or modification of objects, along with access policies and controls. So this access and authorization is very complex in the cloud, and when combined with roles, objects, and Active Directory, it can be very challenging to understand. Many organizations just can't keep up with this volume, the complexity, or this constant state of change. Manually spot checking access in the cloud just doesn't scale. So organizations are using, the ones that are using 2 or 3 cloud platforms may be relying on individual native management tools for each platform, but this creates a lack of consistency, visibility, controls, and policies that can be burdensome to manage, but also creates a situation for inconsistent security and compliance gaps. So addressing this new multi-cloud norm with the traditional approach just simply can't keep up. This has been proven with many high-profile incidences related to inappropriate or malicious access to cloud IaaS platforms. In addition to fines, the fallout can be serious, long-term impact to future revenue, stock price, brand image. Organizations need to rethink identity with an AI-based approach that provides automated and intelligent governance to keep up with the scale and rapid change in the cloud. Now, this starts with getting a comprehensive view of all access across each platform. You can't govern what you can't, you can't govern and protect what you can't see. So as fast as things are changing, you need to have this continuous access visibility to know who has access to what, from where, and how. Now, given the complexity of cloud access, you're best suited to rely on a consistent set of access controls to ensure you are governing access in the same manner, no matter what cloud vendor the user or workload resides on. Now, we're living in a world where there are millions and sometimes billions of points of access that have to be managed. Yesterday's human-based approach just can't keep pace with today's sophisticated security threats and high-stakes compliance requirements. We must leverage AI and machine learning to help automate process and automate access, shine a spotlight on high-risk matters that really need urgent attention, and keep your organization audit ready. Now let's dig a little deeper into how you can discover, protect, and govern your cloud IaaS access. Now, as I mentioned, you can't take control of your multi-cloud infrastructure without getting a complete view of your access. you need to take an automated approach that reaches out across all your cloud IaaS platforms to gather all the access users have to all of your infrastructure and workloads. Now, all of this access and authorization layers across AD, cloud application infrastructure, and data then need to be pulled into a single unified view. And this isn't just a one and done process. You know, access and workloads continually change, so you need to keep up with these changes. Now, with a comprehensive access map, you can now apply machine learning to then better understand access intent and usage across all your identities and cloud infrastructure. Now, as access changes, which may not adhere to policies, it's really important to provide alerting in near real time of any non-compliant access. Now, once you have this holistic picture, you can actually start to protect and secure this access. So once you have visibility to the access within these cloud platforms and workloads, now you can start to make sure the right security is in place, especially around your privileged access. You may have workloads that contain sensitive data or have applications or databases running on cloud infrastructure that must adhere to specific access control requirements. Cloud privileged access may have rights to create, alter security settings, edit privileges, and even purge entire cloud environments completely outside the scope of other access controls. Once you're able to see what access is privileged in nature, you can start putting security controls in place to holistically protect this access. You can secure them by cycling credentials and limit risk by rotating keys and passwords. If you're spinning up a new privileged workload, you can automate the creation of credentials for those workloads as well. Now, for additional security, you can record all session activity so that you have an audible trail of what users are doing in critical cloud environments. Now, organizations have long understood the need to govern access to applications and data, and it should be no different with a cloud environment. As more and more applications, databases, and storage are being deployed on cloud infrastructure, it becomes even more critical that business can ensure they are adhering to compliance requirements. Again, with the massive volume, complexity, and change taking place in the cloud, user error and a lack of insight to potential malicious activity can create a significant compliance gap. It's no longer sufficient to just validate user access once or twice a year. It's imperative to implement and automate compliance policies like a set of guardrails to monitor whether your environment is out of compliance and point to which users and groups are outside that compliance area in real time. Now, using any sort of manual process in an attempt to maintain a strong state of compliance across thousands of millions of points of access just isn't feasible. You'll need to provision and certify access in a standard manner as you would any other application or resource. With a standardized process, you can avoid any sort of shadow IT, and even if your DevOps team tries to spin up cloud resources, you'll have these guardrails in place to limit what can be done based on policy. You also need to analyze what activity is taking place. So what's the history of the user or this account, how often it's changing, who's interacting with it. This will help you create or adjust policies based on the needs of the business. Now, there's no doubt that cloud IaaS platforms are here to stay, and organizations will continue to build their business on cloud infrastructure such as AWS, Azure, and GCP. But before your cloud platform resembles the wild, wild west, or if it already does and you need to wrangle your herd, here's what you can do with your security and compliance reins. Take a consolidated approach to manage your entire multi-cloud. Now, SailPoint's cloud governance, so our cloud access management, can help you discover and govern access to your cloud infrastructure, while workload privilege management can protect your privileged access to your applications and workloads running on that infrastructure. By providing a single pane of glass view across each platform, you now have the leverage to take control. You can monitor access, implement policy guardrails, provision and deprovision access, and detect high user access. Compliance was already difficult before we started adopting cloud IaaS. Now it's exponentially harder with the scale and change of the cloud. But by automating your compliance program with the power of AI and machine learning, you can confidently keep the compliance horse in front of the volume and variety of your cloud workloads. With cloud infrastructure becoming a top attack target, it's even more important than ever to limit your security risk. And by automating least privilege access and the rotation of credentials, you can ensure that your most valued data assets are safely corralled. Now, we've talked about how cloud governance can help you take control of your multi-cloud herd, but let's see it in action. Manish?
What I wanted to do is show you a demo of the services in action. Michelle, can you see the screen?
Yes, you are perfect.
Great. Good morning, everyone. as Michelle was mentioning, all enterprises are moving to multi-cloud, which means that we have workloads running now in AWS, Zero GCP, and these workloads are growing rapidly. One of the key challenges which becomes is being able to govern access to these workloads because these workloads can have a lot of sensitive data, sensitive resources sitting on them, and attackers are always targeting these workloads. And one thing we find in these public cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, and GCP is that almost all security is done at the IAM layer, which is very unique to the cloud. And so all kinds of policies in terms of who can access your sensitive privileges, your assets, your data, what actions they can perform is all done at the IAM layer, which is very, very unique. And so the IAM layer becomes very important to manage, and access becomes the way you secure your cloud infrastructure. And another key thing we see in these platforms is that it's not just about human identities, but also a lot about machine identities. In fact, as soon as you start increasing the scale of your cloud infrastructure, the number of machine identities starts far, far outnumbering the number of human identities. So what we have done is we are launching 2 services here to help you solve this challenge of governing access to your cloud. The first service is Cloud Access Manager, and this is the user interface you're seeing on your screen. This service will connect to your public cloud platforms, your AWS environments, your Azure environments, your GCP environments. And what it will first do is a discovery phase, where it will connect to these platforms using APIs, so no software is required. You can pretty much set up the solution in under 30 minutes. It connects to your cloud and discovers your cloud environment, which means it will map out all your identities, both human and machine identities, as well as map out all the access they have to any kind of a policy in your cloud, whether the access is being granted through groups, roles, or through policies which are hard to manage, such as resource policies, user policies, or organizational level policies. So it looks at all kind of IAM access, which is being accessed in your cloud. And it maps out this access starting all the way from identity and also takes federated identities into account, going to the privileges which those identities have in your cloud, and then mapping to the objects which those privileges apply to. So it's an end-to-end mapping of all access in your cloud environments. Now let's take a look at that. Let's say we go to an identity and we dig deeper into what can this identity access. So what you're seeing on the screen here is a graphical view, which is showing you that this specific identity, which could be sitting in your local cloud account, such as AWS, or it could be coming from Active Directory by being a federated identity, it is showing you what all this identity can access. And as you can see, in cloud, because there are so many ways of accessing things through different kinds of policies, it can be a very complex thing to understand what can an identity access. And what we do is, because we are building this map of access continuously, we have this full view across your multi-cloud environment of what that access is. And so, for example, if you scroll down, you can see all the different assets in the cloud which this identity can access. And you can also look at not only what they can access, but how, or what is that policy which is granting that access, right? So all of that information is mapped out in real time, which also means that as those things are changing in your cloud environment, which could be changing on a day-to-day or an hourly or a basis, all that changes are being reflected in terms of access in your cloud. So not only do we map the objects which can be accessed by your different identities, but also what entitlements or privileges they have in that environment. Now in cloud, you can literally have thousands of privileges which you need to manage, and they're very granular and very hard often to understand. So we not only capture all those privileges which these identities have access to, but also we look at how are those privileges being used historically. So as you can see, there's a historical usage here, and you can look at privileges which have been granted to that particular identity, but which are unused. And obviously, the goal of least privilege or zero trust security is to really right-size access for your identity. So we help you there too, and we'll go a little deeper into it later on. So we are mapping out access for all identities. This is not only human identities, but also machine identities like virtual machines, Lambda functions, and helping you get visibility in this discovery phase on what can they access. You can also look at access from the other side, where let's say there's a specific high value object in your environment, such as a data bucket or a encryption key, and you're trying to understand who all can access this object. And this is very important for scenarios like compliance, audit, where you're trying to investigate access patterns. So all of this is automated. Not only can you look at this information on the UI, you can have a powerful search experience on it. For example, you can go and search for any user who has access to, let's say, any kind of S3 data with a specific tag. And these could be your tags, which your organization is using. And for example, you want to find out across your multi-cloud workloads, which users have access to object stores such as S3 in my multi-cloud environment, which have the PCI tag on them. And it is as simple as that to query your complex cloud entitlements and policies and find those identities which have that access. Not only can you find this information very fast, but you can also create guardrails to monitor for this. And the reason that's important is cloud is all about automation, and it's not practical to keep on manually searching for things. You need to have automated ways of discovering access, which is high risk. So let's say you wanted to monitor for any new users who are getting access to your sensitive PCI data. You can just save any search query you do as a guardrail and think of it as a saved search, just like you have a saved Google search. And what we are looking is monitor for S3 data with PCI tag. And what you're really doing is you're saying, I want to be notified if any new identity gets this access. And you are just now you're saving this guardrail. And that's really how simple and straightforward it becomes to create your own guardrails here and monitor your infrastructure, cloud infrastructure for unsafe access in real time. Now we include a lot of these guardrails pre-built in the product, whether it is for monitoring things like shadow access, data access, privileged access. All of these are inbuilt guardrails. And once you set up the product, they start monitoring your cloud infrastructure in real time, identifying high-risk access patterns. But as you saw, it's very easy to create your own guardrails, which map to your unique audit controls, where you can create your own queries and save them. We also have AI-based monitoring, which is looking at every identity and mapping out and learning how they use their access. And the goal really is to identify any suspicious activity, whether that's users who are suddenly using their access beyond what they normally do, or it's finding identities where which are being exploited and they're connecting to your cloud infrastructure from locations which are suspicious, or looking at areas where users may be using some privileges which are high risk. So all of these are different threat models which AI has built, and it learns them automatically for every identity by looking at the usage data for each identity and helps you keep the risk of cloud at bay. Finally, we also look at least privilege, where we map out for each identity what is the sensitive privileges which this identity has, which are not being used. And again, this is to help you right-size access and take away access, which is posing a risk to your cloud infrastructure. So through Cloud Access Manager service, we allow you to not only discover all your access, but also govern it using both guardrails as well as automated AI monitoring. And to complement this service, we have a second service, which is the Workload Privilege Manager. And so the Cloud Access Manager is securing your public cloud, which is your AWS, Azure, your GCP environments, the public cloud IaaS layer. But remember, you're also running a lot of workloads and virtual machines on top of this public cloud. And it's equally important to secure access to them as well. And that's what the Workload Privilege Manager service does. It maps out all your workloads, your virtual machines, your VMs, your Linux, Windows VMs, which are running on these public cloud environments, and lets you secure access to them through SSH, through RDP. So let's say you have a specific virtual machine. There are different types of access you can grant to your users to these virtual machines, whether it's privileged access, standard access. We take care of setting up the access, provisioning the keys, rotating the keys, securing the keys. We also let you monitor all of the activity which is happening in those access sessions, such as, where you're looking at, for example, a specific access and you want to look at what activity did that user do. All of that is monitored here. And this provides you one place to not only provision this access, but also monitor it. So for example, let's say a user has been granted access to a specific virtual machine. He can connect to that virtual machine from this environment. And now he has an ability to get into that virtual machine in the cloud. And let's say he's doing some activity. All of this information will then be taken by the system and is presented as reports which you can monitor for and look at. So we are giving you a method of not only securing that access, but continuously ensuring your audit and compliance and ensuring that your virtual machines and workloads which are running on top of the public cloud are protected. And one of the challenges here is also the scale of these workloads can be very, very high. And so it's critical that when you're setting up access and provisioning your keys to these workloads, you use automated methods. And so one of the key unique value adds for our platform is the automation we deliver in terms of setting up credentials at all of these different workloads, which are constantly spinning up and down in your cloud environment. So with that, I want to pause and thank you for attending this webinar, but also wanted to open up the floor for any questions you have regarding managing and governing access to your cloud environments.
Looks like we got a few questions here. I'll go ahead and kick one off. Is this a SaaS or software solution?
Great question. Yes, this is a SaaS-based solution. So it's a SaaS-based offering, but it's delivered from the cloud. However, we are building integrations with both EyeIQ and Identity Now. So you can use your existing IGA platforms to govern and get the benefit of these services.
Awesome. How does this solution use AI and machine learning?
So this solution uses AI and machine learning to solve the problem of not only mapping out who has access to what in your cloud environment, but also learning the usage profiles for every identity by looking at their historical usage data and doing things like peer group analysis on that, as well as using machine learning models to train based on that data and identify suspicious activity, high risk access being granted in your environment.
Awesome. Does IaaS vendors like Amazon provide similar capabilities to secure workloads?
So platforms like AWS Zero GCP provide some basic tools in terms of managing your policies and so on. But where it becomes a big challenge is how do you provide a very granular access visibility, governance, and protection all in one suite, which is not only multi-cloud, but is also has all those governance capabilities related to IGA. So yeah, so they provide basic solutions, but if you want an enterprise-grade IGA solution for managing access across your multi-cloud environment, then it becomes a challenge, and we are essentially helping you address that challenge.
Awesome. So I have a few questions come in through the Q&A as well. So Manish, can you elaborate on the ML model that we are using?
Sure. I mean, machine learning has many different models, and so we use multiple models. Obviously, we use some of the newer techniques like deep learning, but we also use a lot of old models like resource forest and so on. And the goal really in all machine learning is look at the data which you have available, and using that data, you are essentially learning the usage patterns of different entities in your system. And you're using those to identify activity or access which is abnormal, which could be based on things like looking at the peers or looking at certain different kinds of sets within the environment. So yeah, so we're using a lot of cutting edge techniques there, and happy to sort of take a deeper dive in a follow-on conversation on that.
For sure. And if we don't address any questions, we will follow up with everyone after this webinar, of course. I have another question here. If we go with cloud governance, do we still need individual connectors that come with EyeIQ for Azure, AWS, etc.?
It's a great question. The cloud governance service is MultiCloud. It supports managing your IaaS environments across AWS, Zero, and GCP. And so it includes all the connectors you need for doing that. It's a one solution which addresses all three cloud platforms.
Awesome. Next question we have, is this different? Is this a different product from EyeIQ, or can it be installed as an additional module of EyeIQ to be accessible from the EyeIQ console?
A great question. As I mentioned, this is a SaaS service, but we are what we are doing is we are integrating it with EyeIQ as well as Identity Now. So yes, you will be able to leverage the capabilities which this service brings in your EyeIQ platforms right there and then. So yes, the short answer is it will integrate with EyeIQ to help you leverage those capabilities.
Awesome. Next question is, how can I tune the threat alerts to minimize the noise, especially false positives?
Yeah, I mean, with any AI-based systems, you can have false positives. That's certainly true. So just to kind of break that down into two parts, right? So we have two kinds of monitoring we do in this product for governance, right? One is based on searches, which are the guardrails, and the second is based on AI-based anomaly detection. And in both cases, we obviously are helping you really control what you're looking for and what you want to monitor in your cloud environment. With guardrails, you can create your specific queries which you want to search for or access patterns in the environment and get results, get findings which are matching those. So it's very, very specific. For AI-based models, we use a lot of inbuilt techniques to reduce noise, and this includes things like not only learning usage profiles or activity profiles for individual identities, but using things like peer group analysis to kind of make sure that we are not learning one-off patterns. So there's a lot of work which already has gone in that area, and we are continuously improving those algorithms and some of those areas.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. We have another question. When the guardrail query detects a new identity during monitoring, is there any way to tie that to a SailPoint approved access request ticket, if one exists?
That's a great question. So one of the things we are actively building right now is exactly those kind of deeper integration workflows around certifications, access requests, and SOD. With the tying this service and the visibility and governance it provides into the standard sort of processes and the workflows we have in our IGA platforms like IdentityIQ and Identity Now. So that is exactly what we are building on, and that integration will be coming soon, later this year. And exactly those are the kind of scenarios which you will be able to enable
Awesome. One more question. How is the license structure for cloud governance?
So the cloud governance service is basically helping you govern access to your cloud environment. And so the licensing is largely based on understanding scale of the environment, as well as the amount of identities which are getting access to the cloud environment for privileged activity or other areas. So we're happy to provide more details on that based on your unique needs. So as I mentioned, we have two services there: Cloud Access Manager and Workload Privilege Manager. And so yeah, happy to go into the second level of detail, but at a higher level, it is basically we look at the size of your cloud environment as well as the amount of identities which need privileged access to that environment.
Awesome. And I think last question, is this product different from Identity AI?
Yes, they're complementary products. Identity AI is really helping us automate some of the traditional cumbersome processes in our IGA processes like certifications and so on. And Cloud Access Manager and Workload Privilege Manager are specifically around helping you govern access in your cloud platforms. And so they're very complementary, and they work with each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think that wraps up the Q&A. If we didn't get to any questions, keep in mind we will have all of these, with the sales rep follow up with you individually, just in case.
Thank you all so much for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your day.